We had, when I was a child, we had choir, trials for the church choir. There was 20 openings and 22 singers. And somehow I didn't make the cut. So
you didn't make the cut?
I didn't make it. There was only 20 openings.
I wouldn't make the cut either. And I wouldn't be disappointed either for church choir. I'm not a singer.
Yeah.
But this is the chance you do yourself, Tom.
You know, sure, on YouTube. What do you call it? Go viral? New York, New York. We're not going to have people shut us down right away.
We'll just see people logging out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Sound quality. Wow. Sound quality again.
We're at 90% here of the slides.
Okay.
Are you talking to me? No, Tom. I'm good. Are you good, Bob? Okay. I'll get the archive started.
Will the camera be on us during the question and answer part?
Yes. Only you. I'm just the voice in the corner. Okay, we ready to go? Okay, guys. Okay, good evening, everyone. And live from the studios of North Dakota State University, we have the second session of the Spring Fever Garden Forums for 2016. My name is Tom Kolb, and I'll be the moderator tonight. And I'm here with my co-executive producers, Bob Birch and Scott Swanson. At the Spring Fever Garden Forums, we connect the gardeners of North Dakota to the researchers and educators of North Dakota State University. And our format is simple. We start with a 20-minute talk on a timely topic, and this is followed by your questions and answers. And we encourage your participation. For those of you who are on Blackboard Collaborate, you can type in your questions in the chat box, and I, the moderator, will then ask those questions of the speaker. And we do have a full slate of presentations ready to go tonight, so let's get started. Let's start with learn about the Northern Green Expo. That's a regional conference, a mega conference held every year in the Twin Cities. And it's where professionals and avid gardeners come together to learn about the latest trends and technologies in the green industry. And when we talk about green industry, we're talking about landscape services, lawn care services, nurseries, garden centers, greenhouses. And we had Jackie Buckley, the Morton County Extension Agent, went to this year's Northern Green Expo, and now she's going to share with us some of the hottest new plants for 2016. So let's welcome Jackie.
Thank you very much, Tom. And I'm going to go through this quite quickly. I probably don't have time to go through all of them, but you have the handouts. You should have the handouts in front of you. And so you should easily be able to follow along as I go, even if I go quite quickly. And so the first one we're going to talk about is Double Place Spirea. It is something that was released and is grown. You can get seed from Midwest Ground Covers, Fisher Farms. This is a Zone 3A plant, 24 by 36. That's the height. I mean, yeah, the height is the first number. The spread is the second number. It's smaller and more compact, and you can see that it's got a magnificent red color to it. This one is a little slower to leaf out, good for mixed borders, mass, and foundation plantings. Now, this one is kind of a unique. What they did is combined a bunch of sedums and put them all into one planting, and it's kind of a big ground cover. Of course, sedums are good for slopes, ground covers, living walls, borders, stone pathways. You might want to consider some for your fairy gardens. Midwest Ground Covers, the greenhouse or place where you would get this ground cover. Lemon Lace Elderberry is a new elderberry that is available from several different nurseries. It has a bright golden foliage. It's also an edible herb, and so if you're interested in herbs, this is an edible herb that you would be able to eat. It's good for a border plant. It's low maintenance, likes full sun, and you should prune it hard when it's younger because you'll get a nice fuller habitat for this plant. And then the flowers develop on old wood, so you would want to prune after it gets done blooming in the spring. This one also is deer resistant, and you could plant this one in part sun as well. This is Cordoba tall purple moorgrass, a zone 4 plant. It gets quite tall, 7 feet, and so if you don't have a lot of room for height, this is one that you might not want to consider. About 4 feet in spread, but the plant itself is only about 1 to 2 feet tall, and then of course it heads out, and that's where you get the height from. It forms a 1 to 2 foot tall mound with airy flowering stems that turn a purplish red in the fall once it starts to cool off. The next one I have is a pink sparkler birch leaf spirea, another zone 3 plant, about 5 feet by 5 feet. So this is a taller spirea, early summer bloomer, will rebloom in the fall if it gets enough, if the season is right. The foliage will turn burgundy in the fall. We all like that nice red color, and we're always looking for more red in our landscape. This is a plant that's rounded in its mound shape, and it needs little pruning. Bailey Nursery in Minnesota would have this one available. Cayenne dogwood, we all like the dogwoods because we like the red twigs that it leaves. I would caution that if you can't keep this one in check since it spreads by suckers, this one may be a concern for some homeowners because of its spreading habit. It also gives you a good orange-red fall color. This one will do well in moist areas. So if you have some lower areas in your yard, it would do well there. Bailey's will handle this one, and the First Edition network growers will have this one. This is a taller shrub, anywhere from 6 to 8 feet tall, and will spread 8 to 10 feet in width. Jolt dianthus is an annual. So I'm going to talk about annuals. I'm going to talk about trees and shrubs and perennials. So it's going to be a mix of things. It's not going to be all one type of a plant, okay? And so this happens to be an annual. It's a really bright pink color. It comes in 2 colors, pink and cherry. Flowers all summer long, which is nice about this dianthus. It's great for garden or your containers. It flowers all summer long, 16 to 20 inches tall and 12 to 14 inches in spread. And those of you that like coleus and a different type of a color of a coleus, this one is kind of an orange, burnt orange color to it. It's another annual, of course. It gets quite large, so 18 to 24 inches. So we want to plan where we're going to put this one with a spread of 16 to 28 inches. Full sun or shade for this one. This one does flower later, which is nice because we always want to prune off those flowers to make sure that we get that plant to spread out better. This is great for landscape beds or for your larger containers, or if you have some big pots or brick plantings that you might want to use this one for. This is a meadow sage. Blue Marvel is its name. This is a zone 4 plant. 10 to 12 inches in height, 10 to 12 inches in width. It's a great habitat for gallon containers. This one happens to flower longer. It's an excellent rebloomer in the garden. And this one also is rabbit resistant, deer resistant. And it's also for those of you that are maybe thinking about pollinator gardens, butterflies and hummingbirds like this plant as well. Full sun. And it likes dry. And so if you are also a xeriscape garden, you might want to think about that one as well. A new apple, and I know if Tom is probably, he's the big apple guy here. Kinder Crisp is a offshoot or offspring from Honeycrisp. And so it's got the same flavor and taste of Honeycrisp, but it's in a smaller package. And so if you send your kids lunch to school, this would be a nice one for that because it's more of a 1 serving size. Especially if you have smaller children, they might like that. It's great for snacks and kids' lunches. It flowers early. It ripens in August, and the fruit is best from the tree. Just pick it right off the tree, which is nice. This is a new clematis, a zone 4. This one blooms quite early. It's large flowered. It's lilac blue petals and then like a fountain-like, spidery-like center to it. And the blooms are 4 to 5 inches in width. And so it's got a nice robust flower. And this one also butterflies love. And so this is one you might want to consider. And if you like oak, and this is a newer oak, it's called Kindred Spirit. And if you don't have a lot of room, and this won't be one you might want to consider possibly for a boulevard, if your city or town would approve that. This one is basically supposed to only get 6 feet in width. And so it's a tall columnar type plant. Zone 4, the foliage is a dark green, resistant to powdery mildew. Like it says, it's ideal for small urban yards and narrow streets. It'll get yellow to yellow-brown color in the fall, and it's also pretty drought resistant, so that's a good thing. If you like heuchera, or as we call it, coral bells, this is a nice new coral bell that's kind of a rust color. Of course, these usually, well, most of the time will like, more of your shade areas. You can grow this one in some sun. It will tolerate that. Large cream-colored flowers, midsummer to early fall. It does well in summer heat and humidity, which is not very typical for a coral bell. And this one also is deer resistant if you have problems with deer. Forever Pink Phlox, Zone 4. This one's very compact and clump forming, 12 to 16 inches in height and the same as in width and depth. It's a repeat bloomer, about 1 inch purple pink blooms on this plant. It's mildew resistant, has a very fragrant cut flower that you can use it for, and it's planted in full sun and very drought proof. And if you're a dahlia lover, you might want to think of these mini dinner plates, as they're calling them here. Go Red Dahlia. 14 to 20 inches in height, same as the spread, but these flowers get anywhere from 4 to 5 inches. And so that's a nice, big, large flower. Partial to full sun. You want to keep it moist in the evening. Let it dry before you start to rewater. It likes to be dried out. And then these will need fertilizer because of the robust blooming that they do. You probably need to add some extra fertilizer to this one. And this one is nice because it's not necessary to deadhead or pinch it back. If you like climbing roses or want to use this one as a shrub, you can do that one with Above and Beyond Rose. Kind of a yellow, pinkish, coral type colored flower. Blooms mid to late spring. Dependable climber, or you can use it as a freestanding shrub. It's very good as far as fungal disease resistant as well. It's good for colder climates, and a lot of the climbing roses are not always real reliable here, but this one might work for you if you would like to try that. Celosa, Dragon's Breath, is one that has a deep red foliage, 24 inches tall, so this one is another plant that's quite tall. Late blooming, large, vibrant plum colors that thrive in heat and humidity. Any plant supplier hopefully will have this for you. And what I'm going to say is that not every plant supplier will have all of these plants, so you might have to ask for them. And some of these, since they're new, it takes a little while for them to get them out. If you're a herb grower, you might want to consider this basil, Balsamic Blooms Basil. 18 to 24 inches tall, so this is a little larger basil. This one has edible flowers, and so if you like a mint flavor, you might want to eat the blooms, and if you like the leaves, the sweet basil taste will work for that as well. And so it's a dual purpose plant, as we'll call it. And as with all basils, of course, they like it to be warmer when you put it outside, and so you might want to wait a little later for that one. It can be used in containers and also in your garden. And of course, you can see that it's got a nice purplish color, burgundy kind of a color to it. And so it would be a nice accent plant anywhere as well. If you like some type of an evergreen or a shrub, or as a good privacy screen, you might want to consider Star Power Juniper. Zone 3, 17 feet tall, 7 to 9 inches in 7 to 9 feet, excuse me, in width. It's delicate yet dense texture, fast growing and durable. Full sun and of course well-drained soils for this juniper. And a very unique Rocky Mountain juniper is this one, released out of Oregon. It's called Snow Flurries, and it's got a variegated foliage to it. And so this one is very different. It's a creamy yellow, variegated tips with gray-green branches. So it would be very unique in somebody's yard if they would like to try this one. And that one happens to be limited in its supply as well. So you might have a hard time if you're interested in that one, hard time to find it. This next one is a foxglove. It's an annual, 3 feet tall by 2. It doesn't require staking, large containers and borders. It's fast growing. It makes a great cut flower, great branching habit. So it keeps its nice shape as it does. It likes moist, well-drained soil, full sun to part shade for this plant. This plant grower, what he did is he crossed a sedum and a succulent and got Sun Sparkle, Sedoro, Blue Elf. And so it kind of acts like a sedum, and then it's also kind of a succulent. So then it's going to do well in your rock gardens. Compact growth with dark pink flowers in late summer. And then it's got kind of I don't know what you call it, a smoky blue color. And the flowers smell like grape soda. So if you like grape pop, you might like this plant. So it might be something that you want to consider for your small children because it'll smell good. This is a new hosta. It seems like they're always coming out with new hostas. This one is called Raspberry Sundae. And this one is unique in that the flowers and then the petioles and the stalks to the plant is the raspberry color. And then of course with the variegated foliage, it's going to make a really nice looking plant. Now I know that it's going to have to be in shade, and that's the hosta, the variegation doesn't always stay true. And so I couldn't find anything that says it's not going to, but it's something that you might want to try. It's very compact, 9 inches tall, and 21 inches as far as spread. So it's going to be a nice bushy one. If you like the geraniums, this is Jolly Jewel Night Cranesbill, Zone 3, low growing, clump forming, containers and borders, hot pinks, purples, and peaches. This one comes in. This one blooms all summer. Garden World and Growing Colors might have this one a bit available for you as well. Electric Lights Red Azalea. I'm questioning this one. It says it's Zone 4. The thing I question about that is what I've been reading is that it likes acid soil. So it probably won't do well here in North Dakota unless you would have it in a pot and we're able to move it inside. It says it's Zone 4, but I question in our soils if it's going to do well, even though it says the flower buds are hardy to 30 below. And this is another one that's the same way. Anytime our azaleas, they like a more acidic soil. And so we might, I don't know if you want to maybe try these as a trial plant, but probably not something that we want to count on in North Dakota. This is another dogwood, Neon Burst is called, and it's got a really neon yellow and green color to it. It's got good full foliage color. Fall, it turns to a soft purple, yellow and orange with red branches, and a very nice plant, full sun, and has good heat tolerance on this one. Here's another very columnar, I guess we'll call it, of a bur oak. It's Top Gun. I think of the movie Top Gun when I see this name. Those of you that remember that, those of us that are a little longer in the tooth might remember that movie. It's Zone 2, so it should do okay here. It's quite tall, 50 to 60 feet. Upright, narrow, light bark, ideal for narrow spaces. This one is very drought resistant as well. Here's a dwarf spruce, Zone 2. Delicate looking with smaller, shorter needles, multi-stem growth habit, Grown in trials for 20 years before it was released out of the Morden Nursery up in Canada. This is a begonia, and this one is a 2-inch bell-shaped flower, full sun, partial shade. This one also will like acidic soil, so this is an annual, so we can use that type of a soil in our hanging baskets and large containers, so it'll do just fine. Here's some cannas that are a little bit smaller, come in yellow, pink, and kind of a red color. They're a little shorter, a little bit more robust in their habit. Bronze, scarlet, red shades, great for height in gardens. Kentucky coffee, this one was released out of the University of Minnesota. It's large, green, and this one has the bipinnately compound leaves. This is a male plant with no pods, so it won't make a mess for you in your yard. Here's another clematis, and this one is, how much time do I have? Are you timing me? So I don't go over, you just give me the 5 there, Tom. Double blooms, shorter sepals, small garden, balcony, deck, or patio plant on this clematis because it's only 3 to 4 feet in height. This is another hostas, Rainbow's End, another variegated one. Northern Empress, and this is the NDSU release out of, it's a zone 3. It's a small stature Japanese elm, burgundy red fall foliage, moderate to good drought, minimal effect by black leaf spot, elm leaf beetle, and Dutch elm disease, which is good news on this one. Another one, if you like maple, this is another NDSU release, September flare, sugar maple, winter hardy, good crown density, orange to red color in the fall. This is a switchgrass, quite tall, 4 feet by 2.5 feet as far as spread. Dense, upright, columnar habit. This one is deer resistant, and so if you have deer problems, this one might be a choice for you. Here's another butterfly plant, and then we have St. Croix American elm, which is a resistant, Dutch elm disease resistant one released out of Minnesota. This one will be in very short supply. A rose, neon red, zone 4, intense color. This one is a bush, and so you might want to try that one. Nice red color, blooms a lot. And if you like grasses, this is a tall, little blue stem, very good one that we might want to consider. Heliopsis, nice yellow color from proven winners. Hibiscus, another one. A hydrangea is another one of those, very pink in color. There's another elderberry from Morden up in Canada, so it should be very hardy for here, should do well. And then there's a Veronica. Northwind maple is a zone 4 plant, spectacular orange and scarlet fall color. This is a Siberian spruce, which is zone 2, possibly a substitute for the Colorado blue spruce. Plum crazy wood sorrel. Very showy oxalis, and this is more of a house plant, but you might want to put it outside in the summertime. Zinfandel hydrangea. Zone 3, very pretty colors, very nice flower to it, very cone shaped. Here's a new lilac, zone 3. And this one, Farfugium, is just basically a green plant that you might want to use in arrangements or just for decoration. And then I have 2 potentellas, one's a yellow and then one's a white. And they are both really large, robust flowers that look more rose-like than potentella. And these are both out of the Morden Research Center. And that is all I have for slides. I had to rush through these last ones, but.
Okay, wow, Jackie, that is a lot of cool plant. No, I got to tell you, like when you see a good movie, you got to go back and see it again. And there's a lot of good stuff here. And I'm definitely going to go back and see a lot of wonderful plants and great colors. Man, I got spring fever. Okay, here we go. Now we invite your questions, and you can just type them in the chat box, and they're already starting to come here, Jackie. Here's a kind of a technical question. When like you say it's zone 4, does that mean both zone 4A and 4B? Or if it's only listed as zone 4, should they be considered experimental for North Dakota 4A? If I live in 4A, which is a lot of the state,
Yes.
that's the coldest part of the 4.
Yeah, and for where I live, it's zone 4A by Mandan.
Yeah.
And so I still encourage my gardeners to think about where you're going to place this plant. If you have a microclimate, you can probably plant it. I really discourage them if they have a north and a west exposure to be careful where they're putting these zone 4 plants. It did not say on any of the material that I got whether they're 4A or 4B. So I guess I'm not sure how to answer that question because it didn't say, Tom.
Yeah, I think you have a good comment there about all the micro climates, micro environments, even on your own property, and being sheltered from wind versus, like the east facing location versus that harsh north facing location. So and also a lot of it has to do with how much of a risk taker you are. Because
Right.
if you see something really special, that zone, 4 or 4B, and it's worth the risk. You can just put it in a more sheltered spot.
More sheltered spot, try to mulch it a little more
Right.
in the winter time so it's protected. And in a winter that we just had, it probably would have done just fine.
No worries. We all know global warming is just starting, right?
Right.
Okay. How about, can you, where is that Bailey's Nursery?
It's in Minnesota. And I can't remember the name of the town.
St. Paul.
St. Paul. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good thing because a lot of your trees are from Bailey's Nursery. That's a number 1 nursery for our state.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking that for a lot of these experimental plants or a lot of these new plants, I would go right to the Bailey's go online into the Bailey's Nursery. They have a listing and description, and you can find if Bailey's Nurseries offers that particular plant.
Right. And then that if they're from Bailey's, I think we can trust them
Yeah.
in the fact that they're going to be winter hardy for here instead of going someplace that maybe on the west coast or the east coast that still maybe in our same zone, but they still may not do well here.
That's right. And now how about another general question about where can you get some of these plants? Can you order them from a catalog or order them online?
If you search most of these, I listed at the bottom of the presentation where they can be found as far as most of the nurseries. And if you go look at a lot of like Park Seed, Ball Seed, they carry a lot of these burpees. They carry a lot of these that you can just go online, yes, and get them if your local greenhouse doesn't have it. And that's what happens is a lot of our greenhouses don't have a lot of these new plants right away.
And as far as the woodies, the trees and shrubs, that is, you can just go to your local nursery and ask them, tell them about this special cultivar you like, and see if they can order it for you.
Correct.
From Bailey's, for example. How
Yes,
about
because they can order it from Bailey's.
if Bailey's offers it? How about is there a switchgrass cultivar for zone 3?
Not that I know of. Not
What's,
that I can
north
think
is
of.
North Wind. Is that switchgrass? That's yeah.
And switchgrass is kind of touchy too as far as soil type. It always doesn't do well here either because of our high alkaline soil, and so it might be one they want to try, but it might not do well because that's why we don't have a lot of those ethanol producing switchgrasses that are being used here, is because it doesn't do well in our soil type.
I think, and I was just thinking, I think North Wind could be zone 4. But how about junipers? How long does it take for a juniper to get to its full height? Right? Do you consider them fast or moderate in their growth?
I would say moderate in their growth. It's going to take time, I guess.
Yeah. Do you have a good way about how we can get in touch with other nurseries? Do we just Google them, or see? We're just seeing all these wonderful new plants. We just got to get them somewhere.
Well, it depends on you know, which ones you're looking for and to be able to find what you'll need to look and find. Yes.
Yeah, Google's powerful.
Yes,
that's for
it
sure.
is. Yes.
Okay, what does it mean with intrinsic? When you
That's the nursery name. I'm sorry. I didn't put
for
nursery.
the
That,
tall purple moorgrass.
yes.
That's the name of the nursery.
Yes. And then there's also another name that's not on their handouts. It's ALSIP nursery is another nursery that you might want to consider looking for that one.
What do you consider well-drained soil?
Well, if it's nice and loamy, it will be. And then if it has some sand in it, it will be well drained. Fargo clay, that's not considered. If you want to use an example, Fargo clay is not well drained because it's very, very dense.
How about, can you recommend a holly for our zone in Stutzman County, Zone 4?
I cannot. That's a question I can't answer.
Yeah, maybe
Tom?
a winterberry would be, it's holly-like.
I don't
It's loaded
think.
with red fruits. Winterberry.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Yeah, I want to say Ilex vertilata or something like that. It's winter. Check out winterberry. How about where can you purchase the NDSU released plants?
They are hard to get to find a place to purchase them.
Yep.
I listed that one nursery for the 2 plants, and I would suggest that maybe you try and call Todd West, or Greg is going to be here. Is it next
That's
week?
right. Greg Morganson.
Yes.
Well, you know what? We're gonna
Keep that question for
talk
Greg,
to
and
Greg about that.
yeah, and ask Greg next week.
Yep. You mentioned a Siberian spruce, the Arctos.
Yep.
Is this more resistant to Rhizophora needlecast?
I don't know. It's supposed to replace the Colorado blue
A
spruce
Siberian
as far as
spruce
color.
needlecast. Hmm.
It didn't say anything in the information that I gathered if it had any disease problems or not. So I guess I can't answer.
Yeah, you know, that's one thing we should alert everybody about these great new plants and all their great features, like that sedum that has grape flavor, smell, all these great things out there. You know, this is, you always have to take a little of this with a grain of salt, right? Like they're trying to sell you something. So like they said, Kinder Crisp apple, oh, we made it small so kids can eat it. Well, I don't know. I'm a apple grower, and usually small apples is what we sell for, like feeding horses and pie. You know, it's for pies. So they're trying to put a spin on it that it's good for kids. Sorry, maybe I lost friends by saying that, but you know, small apples are worth about 1/3 the same as a halfway decent sized apple. So just everybody keep that in mind with any seed catalog too. You know, they're trying to sell you something. And that's why, you know, it's good we have our NDSU. We've got our beautiful Absareca farm where we test out a lot of this stuff.
You know, and they have the opportunity, growers and nursery people have the opportunity to go see that. I believe their tours in sometime in August
Yeah,
usually.
They have a tour.
And so it's a nice tour that they can consider. They'll be able to see a lot of these trees as well, trees and shrubs.
Okay, here's a question about iron butterfly, ironweed. Do they self-seed? How do they spread?
What did it say?
Ironweed, sun or shade? You got a bloom time?
Yep. Full sun, like sandier soil, compact, well-branched, a vigorous plant. I do not know if you can buy seed or not.
Okay.
Usually blooms in the fall, late summer. The wild one.
Okay.
Yeah, most wildflowers they should shatter their seeds, and you would think. But you never know. We don't know. That's why we don't know everything. Sorry. Okay, yes, we do. We know everything. Okay, how about how does a garden center in Canada get their nursery stock in North Dakota? like Byland Garden Center in Canada, how do they ship their stuff to North Dakota?
Through APHIS and plant.
Yeah.
The plant inspections.
Yep.
Yeah, there's plant inspection
APHIS
services.
is the
APHIS, APHIS.
APHIS
Yeah.
is the government agency that runs that through. They have to pay a fee to get here, and it has to be inspected, and then they sell it here, or nurseries, other nurseries get it through there, and then they can sell it here.
And we also want to clarify that Bailey's is a wholesale nursery.
Right.
And so that's why you don't go to them directly. You go to your local nursery, who then will go to Bailey's or another wholesaler to get the plants you need. Any other questions out there? Okay, here we go. The more damaging needle cast that people in eastern North Dakota need to be concerned with is the stigmina needle cast, not the rhizosphere needle cast. Stigmina needle cast damages all species seen so far. Siberian spruce has not been evaluated. So Royal Splendor spruce, an NDSU release, which is thought to be a Norway spruce by a Siberian spruce hybrid, and then they cut off. So
Is he saying that is good or bad?
seems like they haven't evaluated Siberian spruce yet. So, I'm sorry, they continued it. Is the Royal Splendor spruce, which is a Norway spruce crossed to a Siberian spruce, is not damaged by stigmina. So, but rhizosphere is also a concern. Can you review? Okay, how's good your memory, Jackie? Can you review or name which of the plants would be best suited for full shade?
Well, any of the hostas will be full shade. The astilbe on there is
Coral
shade.
bells, maybe.
Yeah, and the
you had
coral
coleus.
bells, any of those will be full shade.
Coleus, you had a coleus.
Yeah,
that was
coleus
sun
will
or
do
shade.
shade, yes.
Yeah, that's a hard one. Not too many choices there. That's why, just an alert to everybody. Again, we want to thank our co-executive producers, Bob and Scott, for recording this, and then we will post these videos on the Spring Fever website. And so, hopefully by the end of the week, we'll have this presentation on the website, and so you can review it again and see, and see which ones might work in your particular landscape, sun or shade. Okay, last chance for a question. Okay, seeing none, we're gonna take a break, and then we're gonna move on to Aronia, the future fruit of North Dakota. Is that real? We're gonna find out in just a few minutes. We're gonna take a 5-minute break.
Go ahead, test, Catherine.
Hello, hello.
Yep.
Okay, here we go. On to the second talk. All right, everybody. When I say aronia, what comes to your mind? Aronia. For most of us, nothing comes to mind. We never heard of it. But actually, aronia is one of the fastest growing crops now in North Dakota. So here to enlighten us about this outbreak of aronia across our state is Kathy Wiederholt, the Hardy Fruit Project Manager from the Carrington Research Center. Kathy?
An outbreak of aronia. That's
right. It's
pretty
spreading.
cute.
Look out.
Well, thank you, Tom, and hello, everybody. Good to see everybody again. I guess, I'm just seeing you in the camera there. I'm imagining you. So, yeah, we'll talk about aronia, and Tom's right. Most people have not heard about aronia, and I have to tell you, it's a really huge crop, but not here in the U.S. So we'll just get here to the first slide, and I have to tell you that I Googled the O-N-I-A, what will rhyme with aronia? And I couldn't find any better word than zirconia. So there we are, zirconia aronia. So, all right, here's our picture of aronia, and you have a picture on your handout. You can see the little berries, perhaps better on your handout than on here. And this is just to illustrate like how many fruits there are on this plant. They're one of the most fruitful plants. There's one nursery that said, we chose this plant, and to our chagrin, it still had the most fruit of any woody plant. So you can see here, they're kind of a reddish color when they start, and then they turn to a purple-blue color, kind of a blue-black color. And then in the lower left-hand corner there, I'm picking them, and my hands are turning kind of a purple-black color. They're a very, very rich fruit. One thing on your handout you could notice is the shape of those fruits. They look like little miniature delicious apples, in my opinion. They're kind of got wide shoulders and a narrow bottom, and you can see the bottom has that same apple scar, that same blossom scar that an apple does, that little 5-starred little object there. So they're kind of cute. So yeah, aronia is a huge commercial crop. We just don't grow it in a huge way here in the US, but we're kind of starting to. We're just a little bit here in North Dakota, but there's some other areas that are a little ahead of us. This fruit was actually, one of the parents is from North America, from the US. It's the black variety called Aronia melanocarpa, and there's also red ones and purple ones. And so what happened is someone took our wild aronia and they took it to Europe. And there was a plant breeder named Ivan Michurin, and he's very famous. There's statues of him around different places in Russia. So he crossbred this with a sorbus, or mountain ash. So the aronia we're using for fruit today is not truly the wild American fruit. It's this intergeneric hybrid, 2 genuses brought together to make this fruit. And the berries we're eating today are about 75% aronia and then about 25% mountain ash. Some of the I think all of the websites you will read about aronia, they all say that this is a native North American fruit. Well, it kind of is, but it's not totally true. So I think, like Tom said, we take everything with a grain of salt when we read it online. We're trying to sell you something. So anyway, let's continue on with the weirdness of aronia. Aronia are tetraploids, which is, maybe not that weird. I'm not a plant geneticist. Don't really know that much about breeding plants. But, daylilies, I should say, they're tetraploids. So there's 4 copies of the chromosomes. Daylilies, right? Daylilies come in diploids with 2 sets of chromosomes, and they come with 4 sets of chromosomes. Humans are diploids. We have 2 sets of chromosomes. There's other weird things. Strawberries that you buy in the grocery store, they're actually octoploids. They have 8 sets of chromosomes. So we eat all kinds of crazy stuff. The plants, they know what's going on, but we probably don't. So So aronia, the way they reproduce is they do make seeds, but when you plant the seed, it can be almost exactly like the parent because they do something called apomictic seed production. You don't need pollen to fertilize that little embryo. You just somehow it flowers, and that just causes the seeds to form. You just don't need pollination. So it's pretty interesting. This year I'm actually going to try to bag some of my flowers and see what happens, because I think I've heard that if there's pollination you will get better fruit set, but I don't know if that's true or not. Juneberries kind of do this too. And there's actually a few honeyberries. They're not apomictic, but there's a few honeyberries that are self-fruitful. So I'm just going to try a couple of different things with bagging flowers to see what happens later in the season. So that'll be kind of fun for me, I guess. I'll try to tell you about it. Anyway, another thing, because of this whole apomictic thing where you don't need the embryo to be pollinated, there's very little genetic diversity among aronia. You can actually buy different cultivars. There's about, that I know of, there's 8 or 9 or 10 different cultivars, but what we can generally buy in the catalogs are Nero and Viking. Mackenzie was selected here in North Dakota, and there's one called Galachenka, and there's some other ones that I probably can't pronounce. A lot of these come from Poland. And some places that buy aronia say that this variety of aronia is better than all these other varieties of aronia. But now the Carrington Research Center is joining a study, and we're going to see whether this is true or not, because we do not believe that could possibly be true because of the way they reproduce. There's just very little genetic variation in the plant. So if you think of their family tree with all the different branches, it's a stick. Like their family tree is a stick, like a yardstick. There are no branches. It's just, they're all the same basically. It's actually, what do I want to say, cloning. It's kind of like cloning or like grafting, you know, it's the same plant. It's really the same plant. All right. I said that a lot of other places in the world grow aronia and that we don't really, but on this slide, you can see aronia has been grown in Eastern Europe and Russia since really the 40s and the 50s. And actually kind of a note I read several years ago is that Ukraine used to be the center of aronia production. And then they had the big Chernobyl nuclear accident, and that ruined all the soil. There's so much radiation in the soil that they couldn't grow and export and eat the aronia that they produced there. So Poland kind of stepped in, and they already did produce a lot of fruit, so they kind of stepped in for aronia. Poland produces 90% of the world's aronia, 15,000 acres. That is a lot. That is really a lot. It's 55 tons of fruit. Compare that to the US now, and Iowa is the center of US production. It kind of got started there about 20 years ago or so. They've got about 13,000 acres. And then what I read recently is that the Midwest, which includes Iowa, has several thousand acres. So I don't really know if that's 2,000 acres or 3,000 acres, but there's quite a bit. North Dakota, as far as we can calculate, is about 62 acres. So we're starting, you know, we're just starting, which is kind of neat. It's very hardy here. It does not have a problem growing, so that's good. Of that 62 acres, at least half, maybe 35 to 40 acres, is really grown by 3 different families. There's one family that has 12 acres, one man has 15 acres, and another man has 20 acres. So they will all be using mechanized harvest for those plants, you know, those crops. The other people, not so sure what they're going to do. Maybe we can join together, you know, people can join together and maybe get a harvester together, or there's some other options out there now. So they're thinking about maybe someone will come in and harvest this aronia. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, our 62 acres, we just have a little, it's kind of cute. All right, when I was researching this, I was trying to find out information about aronia worldwide, even or here. But here's this report from University of Nebraska, and they did this food traffic report, and it was completed in 2013. It's kind of cool, this 5-year new product trend. And it said that there were over 540 new products containing aronia that were introduced worldwide. And I think I don't know what it says about America here, but 73, I think, 73% of the new products were in Europe. And we only had, was that 14% here in North America, so that includes Canada, right? So we could eat a little more aronia here if we tried, I think. So of these products that were introduced, these 540 new products, only a third of them had aronia in the name. So that would have been aronia juice or aronia jelly or aronia wine. And then 2/3 of those products had aronia as an ingredient. And you should look at juices you buy that have a dark purple color, because I do know that Old Orchard brand juice, we've bought some kind of, I don't know if it was a blueberry, I'm not sure, it's been quite a long time, but some kind of a dark colored juice. And when you looked at the label, there was some aronia in there. And that's pretty much for color, because aronia is just such a dark colored fruit. If you ever do those energy shots, I think, or some kind of little boost things, people have brought them to me to show me the ingredients, and some of those have aronia in them too. So it's around. We just have to maybe eat a little more. Also part of this report, this 5-year new product trend, you can see how aronia is used. Mainly it's being used in drinks. So that's the easiest way to use the aronia. You squeeze it and get the juice out of it. But then dairy foods and then confectionery. This last summer I went to a meeting and they had these little aronia gummies there. I have to say they were really, really good. They said that they concentrate the juice down to 66% solid, so it's probably quite thick. And then I suppose there's gelatin involved and some kind of starches. And I really thought these would be gross and sweet, but they weren't that sweet and they were pretty tasty. So I was surprised about the gummies. And then the dairy food, that's a very good way to use aronia. It kind of helps the taste, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Also, the second table here, these are, I copied just the top 5 things so that we could actually see them on the slide. They're actually, each list was about 15, I don't know about 20, but at least 15 different things. So the type of aronia ingredients, it's mainly just plain things. I mean, aronia juice, aronia concentrate, aronia juice concentrate, aronia juice from concentrate. So it's all kind of the same thing, but mostly you're getting the juice when you have this kind of product. And then here's where we're going to, this is the whole zirconia. Is it zirconia or is it a diamond? You know, the health claims. Well, the one thing that's kind of undisputed, I think, is this fruit is #1 in antioxidants. It is one of the very highest fruits. It is the highest fruit, actually, among 100 fruits that the USDA has tested. There's this value called an ORAC value. It has to do with how many free radicals that the extract from a fruit can scavenge. And free radicals are things that damage your DNA. They help you age a little bit. We don't want free radicals in our bodies. And so these antioxidants from fruits and vegetables can help dampen those things. So aronia, 15, 16,000, it's TE, which I think is total equivalence. But if you look like where is blueberry, it's way down there. And when you read things about the level of antioxidants in aronia versus blueberry, they say 3 to 5 times higher in the aronia versus the blueberry. So currants are kind of in there. I wish currants were a little higher because I love currants, right? If you've heard me talk before, I love currants. But elderberry is quite high. And actually, in the previous slide, I talked about the 5-year fruit things. There was the 5-year product trends, where there were 540 new aronia products in the last 5 years. There was over 1,000 new elderberry products. And I doubt if we eat many elderberry products here in the US. So we are missing out, I think. I think we're really missing out. So let's look at these other health claims. I don't really have a lot to say about them, but the other health claims you can read. And if you just Google aronia, you can read lots of health claims, right? Lowers your blood pressure. It lowers your blood sugar, lowers your diabetes risk, useful in fighting oxidative stress in your cardiovascular system. They've said inhibits the biomarkers of colon cancer, so might inhibit colon cancer in rats. It's anti-inflammatory, anti-carcinogenic, protective during chemotherapy, urinary tract health, it would help improve that, fights bacteria and fights viruses, reduces eye inflammation. Well, can all these things be true? Who knows, right? But just the word is caution. Use caution when you're reading any of this stuff on the internet, right? And the thing is, these are actually all results from, say, university research. These are things published in journals. So there is real research on aronia, really a research that turns out really good. But you know what? It's this here, all in moderation. We can't believe everything. Animal models are not human models, human subjects, The extracts that they use in the tests may not have been digested by your stomach, and that changes everything. And then the concentrations that they use when they're doing these tests, sometimes you just can't get that much when you eat these things, And I have to say, I read the paper on the eye health, and what they did is they used ethanol to extract the compounds in the aronia berries. They did it twice, and then they concentrated it. And then they injected that aronia right into the rat's eye. So I don't think anybody's going to let someone inject aronia juice into their eye. But they did see positive changes when they did that. So you can say that in theory, there may be something positive for eye health if you ate aronia. But again, you're not digesting it. They were putting it right into your eye. So all of these health claims for different fruits and vegetables, the broad picture of research on fruits and vegetables show that they are good for you. But I would just say, we shouldn't go nuts on one thing. We just need to eat all things in moderation and just take it all with a grain of salt, a small grain of salt, because we shouldn't eat too much salt either, right? So, but anyway, so just use caution. And the other thing I should say about this, if I know I saw a juice once, and it was called Arrow juice, ARO juice, and aronia was maybe the 4th or 5th ingredient. The best way to get something out of, if you're saying I'm eating aronia for my health, the best way to use it is not to drink it where it's the 5th ingredient. The best way to get that healthful component is to actually eat the berry. So, and we will talk about how wonderful these berries are, right? So I said caution again, just be careful. I just kind of want to touch on growing aronia. They are one of the easiest plants to grow, I think. They grow fine here at the Carrington Center. Our soil pH is about 7.8 to 8 in different places. So they do just fine there. We have very good yields. We've achieved almost 14 pounds per plant, and that was an average over 4 varieties. So maybe some varieties did have closer to that 15 pounds per plant. Sometimes in Iowa, they're talking about 20 or 30 pounds. So I think if you were to irrigate them a little more, and we generally do not irrigate, but if you irrigated a little more, maybe they probably don't need a lot of fertilizer, but to irrigate them would probably help. You might get a higher yield. But I think that you can really count on getting, like on an off year, you can definitely count on getting like 5 pounds per plant. And then on a really good year, you should be able to count on 10 to 15 pounds per plant. And if you remember that picture from the very first, the bushes are loaded. The berries just drag the leaves right down to the ground. It's pretty crazy. So, I mentioned the sweetness on here. That's actually kind of a decent sugar level. It's not really high like a grape. Grape can be 24 or 26% sugar. So these are kind of high. So, they're not sour. So that's one thing. The only insect problems we've had so far has been insects on the leaves. And those ones on the top right side, those are pear slug sawflies. They look like slugs, but they're actually a fly larva, and they eat the top side of the leaf. And then we have these lace bugs, not to be confused with lace wings, which are a good insect, but lace bugs. And they like nibble on the bottom side of the leaf. So you've got the top and the bottom. And that won't really bother your plant that year for the most part, unless you have a really heavy infestation. And still, it's not going to hurt your fruit production that year for the most part. It's going to be the next year. If the plant has spent energy making fruit and then it can't use its leaves to do a lot of photosynthesis, then you're not going to have a lot of fruit the next year. And for the home gardener, I really would just suggest using a strong spray of water. And I don't have water out in the research field. I just have myself out there. And I do one application of kind of an organic. Mine is not organic, but you can buy organic variations of a spinosad product. And that one application of that product takes care of all of those things. It happens before the flowers fruit, so it's quite a long interval. But here at home, I would just say to spray them with a strong stream of water, and you would remove most of them. You don't need to remove all of them, just remove most of them. So let's see. And the last thing I want to say here, just on things that might bother. This is from a whole nother talk, and I don't know if someone will talk to you about this year, but the spotted wing Drosophila. It's a fruit fly that has moved into our area, and some of you may have seen this on your raspberries in the last year, maybe your strawberries, your cherries. They really like the soft red fruit, but they can bother other things. In the center, that is one of my strawberries from my garden with a little maggot there in there. It's wonderful. On the right side, those two pictures are from my garden in town of black raspberries. I no longer have black raspberries. They were getting old anyway. I'd probably had them for 7 years, and I just chopped them off. I didn't want to deal with this anymore. There's a lot. And then on the left side, those are June berries. And we had a delay in harvest because of rain and some other circumstances at the research center. And the fruit flies, these spotted-winged Drosophila fruit flies, those holes are all where they laid an egg, and then the hole got big as the little pupa came out. You can actually see them coming out there. We have not seen this in Aronia. Aronia ripens at the end of August, early September, and it is possible for these fruit flies to build up to really high numbers. I wonder why we haven't seen it in Aronia, and my theory, Kathy's theory, is that it's very dry by that time of the year, and these things really like a moist environment. So perhaps their numbers go down after a while. I'm not sure. But I can definitely tell you those plants hung on the shrub like 2 weeks, and we did not see any spotted winged Drosophila. So we'll just have to watch them and see what happens. We're joining with Esther McGinnis and Jan Knodel and their grad students, and they're going to be coming and getting some fruit from us, and I guess putting up nets and doing all kinds of great things out there. So we're going to be sharing our fruit project with them. So is the sparkle real? I think you already know the answer from my handout. I think it is real. These, they are very healthful fruits. The one thing I did not talk about is their taste, and that I may have mentioned that in the handout. Nobody really eats an Aronia raw. They're super duper tannic. They will dry out your mouth, and that's not to be confused with bitterness. Bitterness is like the inside of a lemon peel, a really sharp, like an IPA beer, or unsweetened chocolate or coffee. That's bitter. These are tannic. They dry your mouth out. And yeah, the best way to eat the Aronia is really to freeze them and then put them in something. Put them in your hot oatmeal, and that kind of takes care of that tannin. Put them in dairy products. One of those, that 5-year study where it said, or 5-year product thing, it said the number 2 product that Aronia went into was a dairy product. It really goes great in ice cream or yogurt because the proteins in the dairy products, they kind of bind onto that tannin, and then it kind of removes that drying compound. So anyway, I'm getting the cutoff signal. I could tell you all kinds of things, but I'm not gonna. So yeah, Aronia sparkles. It's a diamond, not a zirconia.
All right. Yeah, there's a comment from the audience about, you talked about those tannins. Is that why Aronia is called chokeberry?
Yes, chokeberry is another name for Aronia, and I guess nobody really liked chokeberry, so we just call it by the genus name. But yeah, the tannins make it choky.
And you eat the whole berry.
You eat the whole berry. There's little
no
seeds in
pit.
it, just like an apple.
Just go eat
Littler
eat
than
the whole
apple.
thing.
Eat the whole thing.
Does it get black knot disease?
Does not, because black knot disease is in the prunus family, and these are not in the prunus family.
How tall does an Aronia shrub get?
Ours are about my face height. I'm 5'6", so mine about 5 feet tall. But the old Mackenzies at the Plant Material Center are about 7 to 8 feet tall and about 8 to 10 feet wide. Mackenzie is the biggest variety. It just grows a little larger. But I would say if you go about, say, 5 feet tall by about 5 feet wide.
Right. So it's a bush. It is not a tree.
It is a bush. It does have some suckering, but it's not aggressive. You can definitely keep it in check. Expands from the crown.
Is there a place where we can sell that fruit if we decide to, since you're inspiring us tonight, we might want to plant acres of them?
Is there a place to sell it? People are working on this on their own right now in North Dakota. Although we've had 2 meetings the last 2 winters. This meeting was to talk about how to come together as a group and maybe try to market Aronia in North Dakota. And if you contact me at the research center, I can get you in touch with that group. And if you want to really plant like 10 or 12 acres, there's some other things we have to do. We can talk about that. But most people are just kind of cultivating their own market, selling at a farmer's market, getting their neighbors to buy it, getting some winemakers possibly to buy it, jelly makers.
How about birds? Do birds like chokeberry?
Birds have not really taken them in North Dakota. I have seen where the birds, their beak has broken the flesh, and those are the ones I eat that eventually get stuck in my throat because they're so dry. But the birds generally haven't been a terrible problem. I can't say that for every area, but have not been a problem in Carrington.
Okay, Kathy, is this the perfect fruit? Because it's so adaptable to our soils, so hardy, birds don't eat it.
Not many bugs.
It's so productive and precocious that you start getting fruits. You don't have to wait 10 years to get a
third
harvest.
year, second or third
year,
year.
you're ready to rock and roll. You just got to learn to develop a taste for it.
I think that's it. You just have to learn to develop a taste
And
for
it's
it.
so nutritious.
It is.
And how
Eat them
about
frozen and put them in like banana bread, right? That's how I said I made banana bread with them, and I thought, well, this will be a failure. It was fabulous. I was shocked. It was fabulous.
and how about the ornamental value of the shrub itself?
They're pretty nice. They're very shiny green, and the leaves are shiny green. There's a nice white flower in about June 1st or so. And then the berries will hang on. If you don't pick them, they'll hang on there. And 2014 was a very long, nice fall. Aronia can have some really nice red foliage color in the fall. We generally don't see it so much in North Dakota just because of the way our fall progresses. But 2014 was a cool year and just fabulous for color that year.
Yeah, I think a lot of Aronia is sold for ornamental value.
There's Iroquois Beauty. It's a small one. It's smaller, but it's in the same species with the fruit production. So you could definitely eat the fruit that it produces.
And you say it's apomictic, so we don't have to worry about like our bee crisis and pollinating.
Nope.
We don't have to worry about that.
Nope.
So,
What I've mainly seen on it when it flowers is flies, like the pollinating flies. There's a lot of different flies that do our pollination here in North Dakota.
And the other thing about to let people know about, to get started, you say it has a very narrow genetic range between the different cultivars. And Mackenzie is available. It's from North Dakota. It's available from Soil Conservation District for dirt cheap prices.
Buck or two usually.
So you don't have to go to you don't have to go buy a $10
Right.
plant. You can just go through your Soil Conservation District.
And these are available now in most catalogs, like
Yeah.
Jung's has them,
Yeah.
and
Right.
I can't think of other names right now, but a lot of catalogs will have maybe Mackenzie or maybe Nero. And I would go for either of those. That's
Yeah,
fine. And then the
so-
Mackenzie.
Mackenzie's very, very affordable. Any other questions out there about the sparkling Aronia? Okay, that's it. Thank you, Kathy. That's really
I'm going to put in one
interesting.
plug for our field
Sure.
day this year is Tuesday, July 19th. And Tom said I could do this, and I totally forgot about it. We are looking for some recipes of fruits that grow in shelter belts. And you have my contact information through here. You can look me up at Carrington. It should be on the handout. But we are looking for recipes for any kind of shelter belt fruit. Could be buffalo berries, could be June berries, could be Aronia, could be plums, crab apples, anything we grow in shelter belts. So send them to us, little cherries. And this is through NDSU. It's not a like for sale thing. It's going to be a little bulletin through NDSU.
And you see Kathy's emails right there on the
Yep.
screen and her phone number, so you can reach her that way.
We would love it.
There you go. And Facebook there too. So thank you, Kathy. And we're going to take another 5-minute break, and then we're going to talk about one of the most timely topics of the day, how to plant and transplant trees and shrubs. So we're going to do that in 5 minutes. Okay, let's get going for our next talk tonight. And I think this is a very timely topic. The weather's getting warmer now, the buds are breaking, the frost is coming out of the ground, and now's the time to plant and transplant your trees and shrubs. And we're really fortunate tonight to have Steve Sagasser from the Grand Forks County office. He's the he's a horticulture specialist there. And Steve's going to give us the whole lowdown on about how to dig the plants and how to protect the roots and how to dig a hole, and then even the follow-up care for our newly moved trees and shrubs. So let's welcome Steve to the forum.
Good evening, everyone. I'm assuming we have a number of gardeners out there, because if you're not a gardener, you shouldn't be watching right now. So this is just for gardeners' ears only. If you're a gardener, you're probably not real happy with your yard, because I know gardeners really well, and I know how gardeners act. And they're always moving their trees and shrubs around. They move their trees and shrubs around the way people move their furniture around in their living room. So what I want to do is give you about 16 years worth of experience that I had when I was in the nursery industry, the nursery landscape industry, to help you have successful plant moving expeditions in your yards. So let's go ahead and get started. We need to talk a little bit about site assessment, and also some of these things about what to plant or transplant when. Let's talk a little bit about soil preparation. We'll actually talk about the digging process and then the transportation process when you get that plant dug or purchased at a nursery, because we're going to tailor this presentation to not just you going out balling and burlapping or digging up bare root, a tree or a shrub, but also how you would take a plant home from the nursery, how you would remove it, and how you get it in the ground. So some of those things we're going to be talking about also are how you're going to replant it, and spring and fall preparations for care. So first of all, we got to cover this base. It's the law. If you're going to be digging more than 12 inches deep, you have to make a phone call. That phone call is 811. It's called North Dakota One Call. Now, whether you're the gardener or you're the contractor, this is your responsibility. Don't be like this poor woman trying to rescue her husband standing on a catalog, trying to push him away from an electrical incursion. Keep that spade or shovel away from the high power lines. It's safer for you, and it's safer for your pocketbook. So make sure that you make that one call. Now let's talk about planning ahead. You want to know what plants, first of all, whether you're purchasing them or whether you're digging them up to take them to a new piece of property because you just can't leave that particular plant in your old residence, or we want to make sure that you're planning ahead. You also want to make sure that you're handling the plants properly. They need to be handled carefully at all times. They're not like a piece of hard merchandise that you can put on a shelf and assume that it's going to be just as good when you go back a few weeks later to pick it up and do something with it as it would if it was a plant. They have to be handled properly. We also want to talk about the actual process of digging, making the hole large enough, and always planting at the same depth. Those are some things that we need to stress. And I'm going to cover some of these topics right at the end, so that these are going to be some take-home messages. And we also want to talk about how you're going to support trees. It's one thing to dig them up or plant them, and then you just don't walk away. That's when the real work begins. That's when the care and maintenance takes place. And then also making sure that you have an adequate water source for the plants that you've planted. So let's take a look at this diagram here. Most roots that you'll see on a typical tree, now there are some exceptions, most roots are going to be within that top 10 to 12 inches of soil. You're going to want to dig your planting hole so it's going to be at the same depth as so that when you plant the tree or shrub that you've purchased or you've dug up, it's going to be at the same depth as the root ball that you're planning to dig. And also the holes need to be deeper than the holes that are actually deeper than the root ball will cause that tree or shrub to settle. Then you have some real issues developing. If the tree survives at all, it'll take years for it to recover, or if the shrub survives. And I can cite you an example of where I planted a basswood a number of years ago, planted it about 3 inches too deep. It did survive, but it took that tree about 4 years for it to finally start to grow again. It just languished for about 4 years, kind of pouted for a while. So getting your trees planted back at the same depth, or even if you're going to make an error on the depth, error on a little bit too shallow, that's really important. So let's talk about site assessment. We need to look at things like proximity to trees, other trees or shrubs or structures, patios, decks. What's the long-term impact that planting a tree or a shrub in that location is going to have. And how much sunlight, how much little, is it going to be too much sunlight, or is it going to be not enough? I don't think you'd have a problem with too much sunlight, but you need to have at least a half a day of sunlight for most trees and shrubs to survive adequately. What sort of wind situations are you going to be dealing with? If you're taking a tree from one location or a shrub from one location where it receives very little wind and putting it into a situation where it's going to be in a wind tunnel where it gets extreme amounts of wind, it's going to be really tough on that plant's ability to survive. Think about microclimates, and again, think about water availability. So here's the situation. This is a yard where about 50 feet from one part of the yard to another, you've got extreme amounts of shade on the left, and that's about 70 to 80% shaded during the most of the day. But then the part of the house and the yard that's on the right has 100% amount of sunlight during the rest of the day. So those are situations you have to take into consideration when you're looking at your site assessment. Also, you should be looking at the type of soil that you're dealing with. Texture of soil is important. If it's sandy and well drained, that's a good thing, but you're probably going to have to add some organic matter, and you'll probably have to add additional nutrients. If it's a clay soil, not such a good thing, but you can still alleviate that a little bit by adding some organic matter as well. You'll also need some tools for transplanting, and this is one of my favorite things because whenever I start a project, I usually figure out a way to get a new tool. So you'll need to have, I recommend, a flat-edge spade and a spading fork, what you would call a potato digging fork. You'll need a good wheelbarrow or some sort of garden cart. Some pruners are important, and if you want to remember what the plants are that you just moved, you'll want to put some labels on them, and then pick up some compost or some peat moss as an additive for the soil. Now, there's a right tool for any job, and so this is your opportunity to go shopping and pick up those right tools. That flat-edge spade is one of my favorite tools. You'll also need a wheelbarrow to hold the soil, and this is the wheelbarrow that my wife bought me, but this is the one I wish I had bought, and holds a lot more soil and it's a whole lot more fun to drive. But you'll need a good lopper too, and a good side cutting type of pruning shears, and probably a pruning saw. Let's talk about the way tree roots are packaged. They're packaged basically three ways. Bare root, which means basically there's no soil on the roots. They're balled and burlapped, or they might be container grown. Now, we can split hairs over what's container grown, what's potted, and what's containerized. So I'll just make it real simple for you right now. If it's containerized, it has to have been, that tree or shrub has to have been in the plant for more than a year. If it's potted, it means it's been in the container for less than a year. And most nurseries, when they get their trees and shrubs in the spring, one of the first things they'll do is take those bare root plants that they purchased and put them into a pot, and then they're grown as a potted and sold as a potted plant. Now, if they're kept in that plant for more than a year, then they become a container grown or a containerized tree or shrub. I would like to suggest to you that if you're purchasing a tree or shrub in the spring, and this is the time to do that, when those nursery trees come in, they would rather sell them to you bare root, because they don't have to put the time and labor into potting them that they would, and then they can actually sell them to you for a discounted price. So your task is to get out to your local nursery right now and see if they have the particular kind of tree or shrub that you might be looking for in its bare root state, and then take it home. You can take home a whole carload or a whole landscape planting in the trunk of your car versus taking it home in a 2-ton truck if it was all balled and burlapped or potted or containerized. So balled and burlapped, B&B, that's the way most nursery folks refer to it, and that's basically a plant that's dug with the ball of soil and the roots intact. And the roots will probably, the soil probably will be wrapped in some burlap. And the thing that you need to keep in mind, whether you're purchasing a balled and burlapped plant or digging it up yourself, is you have to handle it with kid gloves. You have to handle it like it's really, really tender. Because if you drop that ball and break the ball of soil, even just crack it a little bit, what happens is it breaks all the hair roots loose. And then you have essentially nothing more than the equivalent of a bare root plant with soil around it, because you've broken that structure. You have to handle it very carefully, and you have to handle it by the ball itself. You can't grab it by the stem and pick it up and move it over and set it back down. So it's really important that you handle it carefully. Container grown or containerized, again, as I just mentioned, these are trees or shrubs that have been potted for more than a year. And we'll get into this a little bit later about how you need to open up the circling roots, and the heaviest roots need to be spread out before you plant them. That's kind of important as well. So bare root, that's just like what it says. These roots there's no soil around the roots. They're lightweight, they're easy to handle. They can be difficult to find at nurseries because a lot of times nurseries in this day and age want to get them into containers right away. So you need to be proactive and get out to your local nurseries and try to purchase them bare root if you're planning on doing anything like this at all. Deciduous trees, I don't think I would try to get anything bare root, whether you're digging it up yourself or purchasing it more than 2 inches in diameter or 2 inches in caliper. It gets to be too much shock to the system of that particular plant if you go much over the 2 inches. So try to keep that in mind. That would be the maximum, in my opinion, diameter or caliper of tree that you would purchase either bare root or dig up yourself bare root. That's not to say I haven't dug some up larger than that bare root, but I've had a machine to dig them for me in one particular case, and I did have some success with it, but I don't recommend that. The other thing about bare root is that you have to plan your planting so that you're digging them in the dormant season and replanting them. This isn't an activity that you would do in the middle of the summer when everything's in full blossom or leafed out and you've got lots of foliage to deal with. I guarantee you will be unsuccessful. So I just threw these slides in, and I'm not going to talk about them in detail, but these are root ball sizes for deciduous trees. So it gives you sort of a guide to go by when you're looking at what sort of types of balls of soil that you need to dig. If you're digging either, this is particularly important for root ball sizes for balled and burlap, but you can also use these as a means for determining the size of a hole and the amount of roots that you should leave if you're digging for bare root. So these are for evergreens, and then these are for columnar shaped evergreens. So let's talk about preparing the planting hole. The first thing you want to do is plan to dig the planting hole quite a bit wider than the ball of soil that you're going to be putting in there or the spreading root system that you're going to be putting in there. Try to dig it about 1.5 times or maybe even twice as wide as the root ball. You don't want to dig it deeper than that, though. If the hole does get too deep, what you're going to want to do is put some soil back into the hole and tamp it down and firm it up again, because you don't want any settling to take place. You probably will get some settling, and so from that standpoint, it's not going to hurt if you maybe plant about 1 inch or 2 shallower than you had anticipated, because that'll allow or accommodate for any settling that might take place. Now, this is something that most people don't do because you don't anticipate this far in advance, but root pruning is really important. In the nursery industry, they do this all the time. So if you're planning to move, for example, a tree or a shrub this coming fall, this is when you would go out, dig a shallow trench around that plant. First of all, if it's a shrub, pull the branches up and tie them in place so that you have some room to work with. Then dig your shallow trench out about the same width as what you're anticipating, either as your balled and burlapped plant would be dug at or your bare root plant would be dug at. And then slice down through the roots as much as you can, but not everything, with your flat edge spade. The larger roots you may have to cut with a lopper or some sort of pruner. When you're all done, put the soil back in the same order that you took it out. So the subsoil goes back in first, and then the topsoil goes back in after that, and then water everything good. And then plan to give that plant some water. If it's in the spring that you've done this, some water over the spring, summer, and fall. And then that plant will have developed a nice, beautiful root system for you when you dig it up in the fall. If you decide you're going to move, and it's in the fall, and you decide you're going to replant a plant in the following spring, you would do the same thing. But it's best if you do it the opposite season do your root pruning in the opposite season from when you plan to plant it. Now, if you just don't really want to get down and dirty, this is one way you can move a tree or dig a tree. I've done thousands of these myself. I've owned several tree movers and have moved trees and shrubs by hand and with machines like this for a lot of people and had excellent success. Oops, we just lost something.
Is it on your screen? Is it on that computer? Or we still computer shut down? Is it not powered on somehow? Oh, the thing came out. It is out here. Steve, why don't you come around and just look at Bob's screen?
Okay.
We can advance it for you there, so we can keep going.
Okay.
Until we get that machine.
Sure. This one here?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so what we want to talk about is getting the digging done. You want to, first of all, tie up branches of the shrubs. If it's on a shrub that you're working with, that'll make the digging a lot easier. Then it's always a good idea to take some twine or some yarn and tie it around the soil line where that tree and shrub is. In this particular case, you can see the grass there, so I didn't have to do that on this tree that I dug. And then some people will say you always need to mark the north side of the tree or shrub. Personally, I have never really worried about this, because when you go to buy a tree or a shrub at a nursery, how do you know what the north side of it is? How do you know it's not the south side of it you're planting it? So orientation can be a good thing. It's not something I spend a lot of time thinking about. I don't lose any sleep over it at night. So shrubs under 3 feet, you can consider digging them bare root, and anything that's about 1 inch or more in caliper, and you're measuring that about 6 inches off the ground, that's going to be easy for you to go ahead and dig bare root. When you get upwards of 2 inches in diameter or caliper, then you're asking for a lot of work and you're going to need a lot of help. So let's plan to go ahead and get this tree dug here.
Let's try the arrow.
Okay, there we go. I think I got it to advance that time.
Okay.
So let's start with digging that trench around the perimeter. Dig that trench out nice and wide, and make yourself some room. And then the next step is to get down like you're praying at that tree on your hands and knees. Take your shovel, hold it in a vertical position, and face that shovel's blade towards you. Now what you're going to do is begin a chopping down, digging through the soil and the roots and pulling that soil back towards you. And then start scooting your way around the tree, always digging down, chopping through it, pulling the soil back. The object of this is to leave a totally undisturbed ball of soil. If you do that, then you've got an essentially beautiful little balled and burlapped plant. But what you don't want to do, and that's what most people do, is they'll stand up straight and tall, they'll take that shovel or that spade of theirs and start digging down underneath. That will work, of course, if you're trying to do something bare root. But when you're trying to ball and burlap, you want to leave that ball of soil totally undisturbed as best you can. So working around the plant, chopping down, digging down, pulling the soil back towards you, that's what you want to be shooting for. Now, when you've got it down to the correct depth, that's where that flat edge spade is going to come in handy. You'll have that ball of soil starting to quiver, starting to shake a little bit. It's almost ready to pop out, but there are still some roots at the bottom. And this is where you need to take that flat edge spade. Now you're standing up, take that flat edge spade and kind of work it down at about a 45-degree angle on one side, move to the opposite direction, shove it down underneath, and cut whatever remaining roots are there, and then do that on the two other opposite sides as well. And when you've got it to the point where it's nice and loose, you could basically roll it out of the hole, that's when you need to get out your burlap or some other type of cloth and force it down, basically roll the ball over to one side, push the burlap down, and then roll the ball back to the opposite side. Kind of picture it like you're diapering a baby. You just want to pull that burlap up around and use some twine and some nails to fasten it in place. And if you do that, then it's going to make it a lot easier to handle and a lot easier to move. Now, this is not going to be a light ball of soil. This particular tree here is a 1-inch diameter maple that I dug out, and the ball of soil was about 150 pounds. If you go to a 2-inch ball of soil and you have it dug at the right diameter, you're going to be looking at well over 200 pounds of soil and tree that you're going to be moving there. So you're going to need to get some serious help with that. Now, we talked a little bit about bare root. Bare root does not work well for evergreens. So with evergreen trees, you're going to want to keep trees and shrubs that you're digging bare root at least 2 feet or smaller, no larger than that. Trees or evergreens do not like to be without soil around their roots. These are some soil conservation trees that you see us planting here on Arbor Day. And when you go with a 2-foot tall spruce or pine, you're going to be okay. You get much bigger than that, they're not going to survive. So, and again, they should only be planted when they're dormant. Digging bare root, the one thing, I guess, if there's a take-home message here, is that you always need to keep those roots moist. But dig them the same way you would dig a balled and burlap plant, always digging down, pulling the soil away. But the other thing you're going to be doing when you're digging that plant is grasping the main trunk about at your waist height or chest height and gently moving it back and forth several different directions to kind of loosen it up and not pull it out. You don't want to break any roots that don't need to be broken, but you want to loosen it up and help it to become more free and able to be separated from the soil. So continue to dig around that root system, always gently moving it back and forth and loosening the plants so that at some point when you've got enough soil removed, it'll basically pop right out of the ground. Once you get that plant out of the ground, then just give it a good little shake, because you don't want to have to carry any more soil around, because that's heavy than necessary. But this is also the point where you're going to want to get your sprayer or your hose out and mist those roots down. You never want those roots to dry out. They should never be totally exposed to the sun and the wind for maybe more than 30 to 60 to 90 seconds. This is the type of a plant or a type of a planting situation where you need to have your hole already prepared and dug before this plant goes back into the ground. That doesn't mean you can't keep it out of the ground for a number of days and perhaps even weeks, depending on how well you keep those roots protected. But when it becomes when you get to the point where you're going to get it planted, you need to make sure that the roots aren't exposed to the sun and the wind for more than just a minute or two. You should have everything ready, and then it should go into the ground, and then that's when you begin to cover it up. Now, if you're traveling for more than a few miles, now this holds true whether you're moving a bare root tree that has no leaves on it, or you've purchased a tree or a shrub at the nursery. You want to make sure, first of all, that the roots are moist if it's bare root. But if it's potted or ball and burlap, that needs to be watered as well, because it's going to be using moisture as you're traveling. I just shudder when I see people with a pickup load of trees traveling down the highway at 60 miles an hour. Things are bent over double. There's no foliage or any leaves left by the time they get to where they're going. Folks, you don't have to do this. You should be wrapping, first of all, making sure that the plant is well watered, and then wrap the branches with burlap, a tarp, or some sort of cloth to protect them. That's important. But what's even more important is when you get to where you're going, you need to almost immediately unwrap those branches. If you don't do that, what's going to happen if it's a warm, sunny day, you'll get some heating taking place, especially if there are leaves on those branches. And in no time at all, those leaves will be fried, and potentially it could even kill the branches, and or in the case of evergreens, it could ruin the needles. Now, we've already talked about planting at the same height as they were growing before. If you're planting a tree or a shrub that was purchased at a nursery and it was growing in a container, how do you know it's at the same height, at the right height, the correct height? You need to find that trunk flare. So pull some of that soil back. Try to find where that trunk flare is or where that root flare is. And if you have to even dig down around about it, dig down into it a little bit, go ahead and do that. And then you're probably going to have some circling roots. I like to take a sharp box cutter knife or something, depending on the size of the plant, and cut straight down through those roots, those circling roots, and separate them out, pull them out a little bit. Yeah, it's a little bit difficult for the plant. It'll survive though, and that's going to keep that plant from developing a circling root problem and potentially girdling the tree down the road. And also, if you're going to be using some anchoring stakes, this is a good time to get those into the ground. Otherwise, potentially, depending on where you put your stakes, you might be busting through some roots if you're pounding those stakes in after you've gotten everything planted. So I like to put the anchor stakes in before I even put the tree into the ground, and then before I start backfilling. This is a tree that was planted at the wrong depth. Do you see that telephone appearance there? This is another tree that was planted too deep. You see the root flare where it's supposed to be? This is what can happen when you plant too deep. You get trunk decomposition. You get that trunk rotting. This can also happen if you've got the mulch pushed too close to your tree. So when you're getting ready to plant your balled and burlap tree, it's always a good idea to take a bolt cutter, if you have one that's had a wire basket planted, holding the burlap together. Make sure you get all that wire basket off. Take all the burlap off, take all the twine off, that's really important. And then center the plant in the hole. Planting a little bit shallow is probably a better idea than planting too deep. Certainly don't plant too deep. Err on the side of planting too shallow. Get that plant in the hole, make sure that you can see the trunk flare. Add your topsoil, tamp it lightly, and get some water on it, and it's going to be ready to take off and start growing. Basically, you want to use the same type of procedure when you're planting bare root. The one thing that's really cool about bare root planting though is that if you've got some really prized roots and you want to make sure that they're going to survive, then you can dig your hole at different odd shapes and to make sure that those roots have room to grow. Just planting bare root trees, this is sort of a brief little set of diagrams. Soak the roots. If these are trees or shrubs that you've purchased and you don't know how long they've been in transit, chances are the roots are dried out. I like to soak them for a few hours before planting, and then always dig your hole wider than the roots are because you don't want to be cramming the roots in. I always trim roots when I'm planting bare root. This is where your lopper comes into play. So here's a good message, a good take-home message. When you're planting bare root, look for those roots that are, first of all, going to be too wide to fit into that hole, and cut them back. Any roots that are busted, broken, or crossed over or turned back in, you can remove those. Wherever you make a nice clean cut, especially on the big thick roots, you're going to get a whorl of new fibrous or hair roots coming out of that nice clean cut. And so if you've got a broken root or a damaged one, that's where you want to get that lopper out and make a nice clean cut. And then get some cheap labor like these kids here on Arbor Day, and you can be the one spreading the roots out and looking important, and have them do the work for you, and make sure that you don't have any of those roots twisting or circling as they start to fill the soil back in. Add the subsoil, put the soil back basically in the same order that you took it out. So the subsoil goes back in first, water it a little bit, add the topsoil, tamp the soil lightly, and then let it soak away, and then water it again. We aren't going to talk about that too much. So here's basically where we started. Plan your planting. Choose the plants that you know are going to fit. Handle your plants carefully. Plant at the correct time of the year. So if you're planting bare root, or if you're digging balled and burlap, they should be dormant. They should be in the spring or the fall. Make the hole large enough. Always plant at the same depth. Err on the side of planting too shallow if you're going to make an error in depth. And make sure that you're taking precautions when planting in heavy or poorly drained soil. You may have to add some organic matter. Support your tall trees, because the trees get leafed out, even if there's not a lot of wind pressure on them when they're bare root. When they get leaves on, that's just like a big sail, and those trees aren't going to stand up on their own. You'll have to support them. But I like to always leave the anchoring wires or ropes loose so that tree has an opportunity to wiggle back and forth, and that helps to stimulate some root production as well. And be sure to get adequate water. I've seen more plants, though, die from too much water than from not enough water. So my rule of thumb is to water them very thoroughly when you first plant them, whether it's a tree or shrub. Give them a double watering, in fact. Then about 3 or 4 days later, water again. And after that, ignore them for about 7 to 10 days. And just try to come back about every 7 to 10 days and give whatever tree or shrub it is a good thorough soaking, and they'll do a lot better than if you overwatered. And if you've done everything correctly, then you've done a good job, and it's a job well done.
Okay, thank you, Steve. And are there any questions out there from our audience? Now's the time to type them in. Steve, did you want to talk about like moving oak trees? Is there, I heard once that you have to be careful about moving large oak trees. Is that true?
It's very true, Tom. Trees with deep taproot, like oak trees and black walnuts are another one, are very difficult to move. And that's why when you go to a nursery to purchase, let's say, a bur oak or, for lack of a better example, a black walnut, you're not going to find a very, very tall tree, especially if it's been grown properly. They're going to be a short tree in a tall, lengthy container. That's because that taproot is so important. So my advice, if you're planning to plant a bur oak, for example, purchase one at a nursery or plant your own. Plant an acorn. And if you're going to plant lots of acorns and they grow fast for you, and oaks actually don't grow that slow, then get them moved when they're only a foot or two tall. Because if you're trying to move an oak tree that's even 5 or 6 or 8 feet tall, you're digging through a lot of taproot, and the survivability of that tree is not going to be all that good. They are not an easy tree to plant.
And how about, is now the best time to be moving our trees and shrubs? Is now
As soon as the soil is unfrozen in the spring, yes, it is a good time to move, especially if you're planning to move trees and shrubs bare root. But remember what we talked about root pruning. If you've got a prized possession, a prized tree or shrub that you want to make sure it transplants without a whole lot of shock to the system. And let's be honest, transplanting always creates creates a shock to the tree system. But I would suggest if you're planning to move it and you've got some time to deal with it, then let's do some root pruning. Remember how we talked about root pruning? Get that done first, get that done this spring, and then plan to move it next fall, or do it next fall and move it a year from this spring. If you aren't prepared to do that, if you don't have the time to do that, then by all means, go ahead and get your moving done when it is dormant. So balled and burlapped, bare root, both move nicely in the dormant season. That said, if you are moving to a location where you want to take some of your old property with you in the form of trees, shrubs, or even perennials, then just use extra caution. Dig them up and go ahead and take them with you. You'll have some shock to the system, but you can still do it. It's not the ideal time, but if you're careful and if you take a large enough ball of soil, you'll be successful.
Okay, Steve, how about we have a root-bound containerized tree? How should he cut the roots?
That's a great question. The first thing you need to do is remove the container. How do you remove the container? It depends on how long or how root bound that tree is. If you can lay it on its side, if it's, let's say, a 10-gallon container, if you can lay it on its side and remove the container by pulling it off, then it's not too much of a problem. But if it's refusing to come out, stand it back up straight again, and whether it's a metal container, you might have to use a saw or a snips to cut the bottom out and then down the side and peel it away. If it's a plastic container, just use a sharp knife, cut the bottom out, and then cut down the side or along the side and peel the container away. Now that you've gotten that done, this is when you need to be creative. That's when you get out your loppers or your pruners or your box cutter and cut multiple slices, from vertical slices from top to bottom. I like to cut in at least a ½ inch to an inch. I know it sounds awful. It sounds like you're cutting arms and legs off, but really they're only roots. And then start to dig your fingers into that ball of soil and peel those roots out a little bit. And make sure that you don't leave any roots wanting to go in a circle. You should have a nice mass of roots peeling out from that ball of soil, and then go ahead and set it into the hole that you've gotten prepared already.
How about fertilizing a tree when you plant it?
Fertilizing a tree when you plant it is not something I do. I'm not saying that folks don't do it, but or shouldn't do it, but I don't do it because I don't want to cause any more shock to the tree system than necessary. If you've got relatively good soil and you've put the soil back in the way you took it out, so that you've set your topsoil over here and your subsoil over here, put it back in that order. And then after a year or so of seeing very little growth, or if the tree doesn't look like it's adapting, that would be the time to put some fertilizer on it.
Can you talk about when would be the time when you would get a spade and tree versus a ball and burlap or containerized?
I've moved thousands of trees with tree spades, and there is a right way and a wrong way and a right time and a wrong time to do that. They, again, should be moved when it's the dormant season. But with that said, you can push that a little bit by moving the season earlier in the summer. But if, for example, spruce and pines just don't move good at all with tree spades or with tree movers, because they have a more horizontal root system versus a spruce where the roots tend to go down more. And so when you cut the roots of a pine tree as you're moving it, you're taking a larger percentage of the roots off and leaving it with less to grow on. Spruce, on the other hand, the roots are more uniform in the way they spread out and go down, so you get a larger percentage of those. In either case, when the new growth on a spruce or a pine starts to get out for more, in a case of a spruce, when that new growth is more than about a ½ inch, that's the time to not move them anymore in the spring. The same with the pine. As soon as that new growth starts to expand a little bit, don't move them anymore. Now, here's the cool secret that most people don't realize. When that new growth is fully hardened up, that's going to be sometime about mid-July. And if you or your tree mover is large enough, it's designed for the diameter of that tree, and so it's going to take the adequate amount of soil and dig the adequate size hole, you can start moving those trees, those pines and spruce, sometime about mid to late July. You don't have to wait till August or September or October. And by doing it then, you're not going to worry about killing that new growth, And you're going to have the advantage of the remainder of the growing season for those roots to reestablish themselves. But it's also important to make sure that you're providing adequate water. So you're going to soak those trees up, fill that slit around that ball of soil, because you don't want that air gap. Wash it down, fill it up, wash it down again, that soil. And then a good soaking for the rest of this growing season and on up until the soil freezes solid is what it's going to take to keep that tree or shrub alive. And you're also going to need to make sure that you've got it adequately anchored. And those anchors aren't tight. They've got to be loose so that tree has a little bit of movement.
Okay, we're going to have some quick answers here. Rapid fire questions, answers.
Mhm.
How about hazelnuts? Is there a best place for a hazelnut? Do we need 2 of them?
Good question on pollination. I have hazelnuts in my yard, but they were planted as 12 inchers, and it took them about a year or 2 to start growing. I've got them about 8 feet apart, and I haven't had any fruit on them yet. I don't know much more about their how to cultivate them and take care of them other than just the fact that get them planted. They take a little while to adapt, and they should grow for you. They're a native plant to North Dakota.
Okay. Sunny spot, right?
Mm-hmm.
How about, are you concerned about maple trees when you plant them in spring and then we get a late frost on them?
Not so much. The important thing to keep in mind with maple trees is to cover the trunk. Put some sort of tree wrap on them, because they will get sun scald or they'll get some sort of sunburn, and then you'll be disappointed because you'll get some sort of rot or decomposition taking place on the south or the southwest side. And you need to do that with a maple tree until the trunk's about 4 to 5 inches in diameter, because then it's thick enough that it can withstand that. If you think about where maples typically grow, they grow in forests and they shade each other's trunks. When you stick it out in the middle of your lawn, where's the shade coming from unless you put it on there? So protect those trunks on your maple trees.
Okay, how about, you talked earlier about the type of soil can make a difference, and with the clay soil and organic matter, how does that work when you plant trees? Like, should we be changing the native soil, or how do you blend in organic matter into a clay soil?
You know, I wouldn't go any more than 1/3 organic matter to 2/3 clay. And the other thing is, ultimately you want the tree or shrub to be able to grow in the surrounding soil. You can't always be going in there and amending it. That's just to give your soil a little bit more porosity. A clay soil is actually harder to work with than a sandy soil. A sandy soil is easier to amend. With a clay soil, you have to do something as well. You have to do something to improve the pore space in the soil. And so a lot of folks think, well, I'm just going to throw a bunch of sand in there. You know what happens when you throw sand in with clay soil? You know what you got? You got concrete. So if you're going to put in sand, you got to put in at least an equal amount of organic matter to really moderate that soil and make it so it's got some tilth to it, some texture to it, some pore space to it.
Okay, last question. Again, with the soil, what do you blend in with clay soil when transplanting trees that came from a non-clay soil?
Again, organic matter. You can't go wrong with organic matter, but you still don't want to go more than 1/3 organic matter, because then you create an unnatural environment for those roots. You do want the roots to acclimate to the native soil that they're going to ultimately be growing in.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Steve, very much. We're ready to start planting. Thank you. And we're going to take we're just going to take a couple minute break here, and we're going to learn about the #1 vegetable crop of North Dakota, potato. We'll just take a couple minute break here.
Yep.
Or the potato breeder?
The potato
Or
breeder
NDSU?
in North Dakota, or North
Wow.
Dakota State University.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, whoops. And I
Are
should
those
be able
your
to,
children, like Ruby and Pearl? And
the potato
are they your
varieties, they
children?
do,
Are they
kind-
yours?
I was the person that released them, yeah. Yeah. And like Trailblazer, I selected that. I selected Ruby. These last few, yes.
Very good.
It is fun. This is the advance, the little,
Yes. Are you comfortable with that?
yeah. Yep,
Yeah.
okay, there, it worked fine.
And
I
it's
just
up
wanted,
here too, I'm assuming you saw that.
yeah. Yeah, I'm actually probably gonna look out at that because where is the camera? Right there? Perfect. Okay,
Okay, are you ready?
Yep.
Ready to rock and roll? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, here we go. And for our bonus talk tonight, we're going to learn about the #1 vegetable crop of North Dakota, and that is the potato. And we first have to thank our speaker, Dr. Assunta Thompson, or we call her Susie. We want to thank Susie Thompson for her generosity, because all those potato samples that were shipped out to all the county offices across the state, those are from Dr. Thompson. We greatly appreciate her generosity for that. And now let's just learn a little bit about the background of the potato and potato production in North Dakota. And also Dr. Thompson's going to share with us some information about the specific cultivars that you received today. So let's welcome Dr. Thompson to the Spring Fever Forums.
Hi, I'm Susie Thompson, and thank you for being in attendance this evening at the Spring Fever Forums. As Dr. Kell mentioned, I am going to give a little bit of a background about potato and also share some information about production. So as a review, probably for many of you, potato is from the nightshade family. It is one of the Solanaceae, of which there are about 2,000 species. Only 160 out of those 2,000 are actually tuber bearing, and so of course potato is one of those. And of the 160 tuber bearing, there are 20 cultivated species. Our common potato, you also maybe will have heard it referred to as the Irish potato or white potatoes, is Solanum tuberosum L. There we go. And because it is a solanum or from the Solanaceae family, several of our garden vegetables are relatives, things like tomatoes, eggplants, the peppers that we grow, tobacco, which of course we don't find growing in North Dakota, but it is a common crop in the southeastern part of the US, as well as petunias. And one of our worst enemies would be the weed nightshade. We grow the potatoes for their underground tubers. Most of the other solanaceous crops, however, are grown for their botanical fruits, which would be found above ground. And potato is an herbaceous dicot, so it has succulent stems. And in our area, we grow potato as an annual. Potato has its origin in South America in what we call the Andean region. So if you look on the slide there, the Andes kind of forms that backbone of South America. I think many of us have been taught that potato was indigenous to predominantly Peru. But as you can see in this picture, potato is found native all the way from the tip of southern Chile near Patagonia, all the way into the Four Corners region of the US. And I previously lived in Colorado for a number of years, and even in my own backyard, I could find wild potato species growing. Solanum fendleri is one of those wild potato species that we find in the southwestern US. Many of us are well aware that potatoes are utilized for a multitude of different purposes. Most of us eat them fresh at home, or maybe we have them as baked potatoes at a restaurant, or if we're in a hurry and we drive through the drive-through at our favorite quick serve restaurant, we're probably picking up French fries. Or if we're snacking at home, maybe this past weekend watching the Fighting Sioux play hockey, or during the fall when we're watching the Bison play football, we're probably eating potato chips. And about 88% of our potato production is used for human consumption. 34% of that is for frozen potato products. So obviously French fries would be number one, but also things like tater tots, frozen hash brown patties, things like that would be in that frozen category. About 26% of the potatoes that are produced are used for the fresh market. So that's what we pick up in the grocery store, bring home, or maybe we pick up at our local farmer's market, bring home, make roasted potatoes, potato soup, potato salad, all those kinds of dishes. About 15% of our potatoes are made into potato chips. So again, chip processing. And then also you can find the little cans with the shoestring potatoes. A lot of us like to either snack on those or use them in some really delicious salads. One of my favorites is with shrimp. 12% of our potatoes are dehydrated. So when we go into the grocery store and we're in the aisle where we have dehydrated potato products, we might see these under the Betty Crocker label. They may be something that is more like an au gratin potato, but the predominant one, of course, would be potato flakes, or also you might see them referred to as potato buds. And these can be very handy. I personally don't really like to eat dehydrated potatoes, reconstituted as mashed potatoes, although the products are getting better, but I do like to use potato flakes to thicken soups, whether it be cream of broccoli or my favorite potato chowder. 6% of the potatoes that are produced are for seed potatoes, and North Dakota happens to rank second in the nation for certified seed potato production, second only after Idaho. And 1% of our potatoes are canned. These can be the whole potatoes. Sometimes you'll find them sliced, and also as part of this 1% would be the potatoes that we might find in our favorite brand of soup that would be containing potatoes, a chicken or a vegetable type of soup. So lots of different uses, and the potato is very versatile in that regard. Now, the potato in the media gets a bad rap a lot of days. They're always telling us that it's too fattening, there's no nutritional value. In fact, the First Lady wasn't real keen on potatoes and has kind of had some influence as far as the potato in our school nutrition programs. Thankfully, though, she's starting to see the light and see that they are a versatile vegetable that really is a powerhouse when it comes to nutrition. An average potato, a 5-ounce potato, and I grabbed a couple of potatoes, but between the two of them would be about at 5 ounces. This one would be about 3. So just a nice sized potato is only 100 calories. There are 0 calories of fat. It's all of those things, the delicious gravies, butter, sour cream that people like to add to them that make potatoes fattening. There's no sodium. And nowadays, if you pay attention to food labels, it's amazing all of the foods that you find that have sodium, and especially high levels of sodium. Potassium is one of the standout nutrients. It's very important from our heart health standpoint, and we oftentimes think, if any of you are runners or like to partake in physical activity, we oftentimes think that a banana is a good go-to source. A baked potato actually has more potassium in it than a serving of banana. Potato also has dietary fiber, has a fair amount of protein for being a vegetable. And finally, most of us think about oranges when we think about vitamin C, but even white flesh potatoes have about 45% of our U.S. recommended daily allowance of vitamin C. So hopefully after this, all of you will want to go home and grab potatoes rather than your favorite fruits, or at least you'll think twice about grabbing those favorite fruits. So our next slide I want to talk a little bit about is market classes. And I think people refer to potatoes a lot of times by their color. I tend to refer to them more maybe by their final or their end use. So if you look at our slide here where we have different market classes, up in the upper right hand corner are the round whites. Typically we think of these being for the chip potato market. And from our potato breeding program here at NDSU, most of our round whites, or probably all of them, have chip quality, chip processing quality. However, in the eastern part of the US, there is a fresh market segment that where consumers and customers prefer to actually purchase white potatoes to use at home for the fresh market. Our round white chip processing cultivars would have what we would call high specific gravity. So they have lower water content, higher starch content, and in that frying process when we're making potato chips, it's the water that is displaced by the oil. So when we have what we call high dry matter potatoes, we are having to displace less water. We can get more product from the raw potatoes, and they tend to make a crispier as well as a lighter colored product, so more white, less brown or caramely. Then we have our long russet, and there are some long whites for processing. Those are, if you can see the gentleman's hands there, that's our former potato extension agent, Dwayne Preston. Some of you might recognize that name, holding our Dakota Trailblazer out on the potato harvester. And again, we want long, blocky tubers because we get more French fries. Again, we tend to prefer the potatoes that are in higher in dry matter because we are displacing that water during the frying process. And also we like that mealy texture, either when we're making home fries or when we are baking those potatoes in our oven at home and we pop it open, and the higher the dry matter, the lighter and fluffier it will be. Most of us love our reds for the fresh market or for table stock. When I was growing up, I grew up on a seed potato farm. We did everything with red potatoes, including making French fries, and sometimes they would get pretty dark and caramely by this time of the storage season. But the red potatoes can vary a lot in specific gravity. For the most part, though, they tend to be on the lower spectrum, so their texture is a little bit more waxy or a little bit more creamy. And these are what really are ideal for making soups, stews, home fried potatoes. Say you boil some for dinner, the next day you can slice up the leftovers after they've been in your refrigerator overnight with a little bit of butter, onion, salt, and pepper, and they will be delicious and they hold together nice. And then, of course, the last picture that I have there is the heirloom or specialty types. These are really of interest to a lot of people nowadays because of the interesting colors of skin, of flesh, but they also tend to have very delicious flavor. Now we're going to talk a little bit about propagation. For many of you, you will recognize pieces of potato, and we predominantly use asexual propagation in propagating our potatoes. But we, in the potato breeding world, we use true potato seeds. And for those of you that might start your own tomatoes at home in your windowsill, true potato seed is actually smaller. And in one of those little berries that you may notice up on the top of your potato plants, there can be up to 250 seeds. Each of them, because of the complex genetic nature of potato, can be different. And so out of the 250 brother and sisters, they might have some similarities, but at the same time they could vary in color, in maturity, in robustness of the vine, as well as in their green stems, anthocyanins maybe in the stems, making them a little bit more red or more purple, and then also for flower colors. Typically, though, what we are using for propagating potatoes are tubers, and again, this would be what we would call clonal or vegetative propagation. And it's very important when we are propagating our potatoes, and hopefully you're all going to go home and get started on this project here in the next 10 days if the soil temperatures warm up. But we would want to use maybe a whole potato that would be right around 2 ounces. The important feature, of course, is the eye. And this is 3-ounce tuber. We could cut into 3 or 4 pieces if we have a limited number of seed potatoes, but for most growers, they would call this a splitter, and they would cut it in half, and then that would form a nice 1.5 to 2.5 ounce seed piece. The more eyes we have, the more potential stems we have. So again, it might depend, your seed piece size may depend upon what your end use is. If you want a lot of little tubers, then you will want to use larger seed pieces and hope that you'll have more eyes that sprout. Just a little bit of background and probably a lot of or memory refreshment for people. Potato is a cool season crop. We should not plant though until our soil temperatures reach about that 45 degree temperature base. Anything colder than that, and our tubers will basically be just like they're sitting in our seed growers' storages, and they will not be as interested in growing. When we can get that soil temperature closer to 50 to 55 degrees, then our potatoes will wake up and they will tend to be able to battle pathogens more quickly. They'll be able to heal more quickly if you've cut them. Potatoes have a high water requirement, and that's because of their shallow root system. They have a root system that is only about 12 inches deep, or 12 to 18 inches deep, so not very deep compared to many of our small grains crops or our grasses or things like that. That's why we need to be able to provide about 18 inches of precipitation, whether that's in our moisture in the form of rain or irrigation water. So a well-drained soil is preferred. Obviously here on the eastern edge of North Dakota, we tend to have heavier soils, but we can produce some very beautiful potato crops. I have a couple pictures here of potatoes in rows. We tend to plant our potatoes in rows that are 30 to 36 inches apart. And again, this is personal preference, or if you're growing for farmer's market, you may have a small planter, so it may depend on what your planter, how your planter was built. And for most varieties, we would be spacing them 10 to 12 inches apart, and we need to plant them about 4 inches deep. And for pests, a lot of you are aware of these. In the top picture is the type of damage that Colorado potato beetle can do. That middle picture is a picture of the Colorado potato beetles. Off in the lower right-hand corner is a picture of green peach aphids. They enjoy potato, and they do spread some of the potato viruses. Another pest problem, of course, is weeds, and the picture here, if I remember correctly, is of some of our nightshades, but a lot of weeds that you'll see in your garden will you'll also find in your rows of potatoes: lamb's quarters, kochia, purslane particularly. But the difficult one is the nightshades, because the herbicides that we would use to kill the nightshades could kill the plants, our potato plants. Some other pests that you may be aware of, you might see deer digging around in your potatoes. Occasionally there will be mice, just some small vermin. Diseases, the most important one is the one pictured in the lower right-hand corner, late blight. That was the cause of the Irish potato famine and why many of our relatives are here. I don't have a picture of early blight, but even given the names late blight and early blight, you would think that that means that the blights come in late and early in the season. However, it's actually the opposite. Early blight tends to take advantage of shortages of nitrogen or dry soils, things like that. It causes spotting of the leaves. They kind of get that bullseye appearance. Verticillium wilt is one that you might see, and that's in the top left-hand picture there. It reminds me of fire blight from trees, but obviously this is in our herbaceous type of crop. But if you have planted a lot of solanaceous crops in a given area, we'll tend to see more verticillium wilt the more times that you have those crops planted. And lastly is the viruses. You'll see unthrifty plants. They might have a mottling, and they will not produce large tubers in most cases. And then I think our last one has to do with physiological disorders. You might see some of these. Most of them are caused because of uneven watering patterns. So that was my take-home message for this slide. We tend to see second growth or knobs like we have in that upper right-hand corner, growth cracks in the middle picture, and then later after we've harvested our potatoes and cut them open, you might see those little areas of hollow heart where people tease about the areas to put their butter. The picture in the lower right-hand corner is of a black spot bruise, and again, we usually can't see those unless we or until we're cutting them. And our final slide has to do with storage. When we harvest our potatoes, a lot of times we maybe aren't thinking about this, but we would want to cure them at about 55 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit for a week to 2 weeks at 90 to 95% relative humidity. This lets our skin set, so we'll have longer term storage. And then depending upon our end use, we would be storing at different temperatures. Most of us that might be doing home horticulture, we would be storing our potatoes at 38 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. There are a number of slides at the end of the presentation. I just wanted to make those available to all of you because the 3 cultivars, Dakota Trailblazer, Dakota Pearl, and Dakota Ruby, are releases from our NDSU breeding program. And I thought if you had a couple of slides describing some of their characteristics, many of you might be familiar with Red Norland and Yukon Gold. So I thought it would be a good comparison to have those in your arsenal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Susie. And this information on all these cultivars is available in your notes. We do have time for a couple questions here. One of them, Susie, is this gardener says that they've heard that you should purchase your seed potatoes rather than saving potatoes from the previous year's crop, or using potatoes that you've purchased for food that have sprouted.
That is exactly true. We try to persuade people from saving their potatoes from the previous year. On the pest slide, when I was talking about viruses, or maybe it was on the disease slide, the viruses that things like aphids vector, also some leafhoppers will vector different viruses. They carry through because of the vegetative propagation. They will carry through into those potatoes. If we purchase certified seed potatoes, and our grocery stores and garden centers work with certified seed potato growers to provide this, then we are assured of having a smaller amount of virus present, or other diseases, bacterial ring rot or late blight or things like that. The reason why we try to discourage you from thinking that you can save potatoes from the grocery store that may have sprouted underneath your kitchen sink or wherever we tend to store small quantities of potatoes is because a lot of those potatoes actually have been exposed to what we call sprout inhibitors. And so while they may peep underneath your sink, they may actually not develop into a full plant when we take them out to the garden and think that it's spring and that they're going to grow. So that's why we try to discourage you from using potatoes from the grocery store.
Okay, that's interesting. How about if you see a green spot on your potatoes, is that from being exposed to the sun? And is that poisonous?
Another excellent question. The potato does, when it gets exposed to light, it doesn't have to just be from the sun, but a lot of times when you're digging your potatoes, you might notice an area where maybe there was a crack in the soil where your potatoes tend to be more green. It also can happen if you store your potatoes where people can leave the lights on. If you have a root cellar, but you have a light bulb down there, and one of your kids forgets to turn the light off, all of that top layer of potatoes in your bin probably would be green. Is it dangerous? We do have, what happens in these areas is we have chlorophyll resulting, because the potato, while we call it a tuber, it's really a modified stem. So anything that happens in a stem happens to the tuber as well. So when we expose the tuber to light, it turns green. The other thing that happens is there is a buildup of what we term glycoalkaloids. And the glycoalkaloids are utilized in our foliage as a protective mechanism from insect pests like Colorado potato beetle. But we, as humans, if we ingest too much, we could have a stomach ache. If we would consume a lot of green potatoes that were high in glycoalkaloids and didn't know what we could be allergic to it. In the most severe cases, we could, have food poisoning-like symptoms, but potentially even die if we consume too much. That's why we discourage you from eating potato fruit.
Okay, how about since you are the potato breeder for North Dakota State University, give me a recommendation for a good fingerling variety.
Okay, an excellent question. And one of these days, hopefully we will have some good fingerlings from the NDSU potato breeding program. But in the interim, because we don't, you'll have to go to your heirlooms. There are a myriad of fingerlings and they are different. There's French fingerling. It has a soft yellow flesh color, very tasty. There's red thumb. It has red skin and kind of a reddish pink flesh, if I remember, and maybe red thumb has white flesh, but there is a, I don't think it's called raspberry either. Those are the two that I guess I'm most familiar with, though, are French fingerling and red thumb.
Or Russian?
And there's, Russian banana. And that too, I don't remember if that has yellow flesh or if it's just more of a creamy flesh, but those are the main ones that you probably would be able to find in a garden catalog.
And that brings us to the point is where can you buy the North Dakota seed potatoes?
Okay, it kind of depends upon your garden center or your grocery store who is doing the purchasing. All of the potato producers use and I didn't think to bring one, a seed directory. And so in that certified seed directory, there is a list of the grower, of each cultivar, and then also the grower or farmer that produced the acreage of seed potatoes. But depending upon your garden store, I know Gurney's has bought seed potatoes out of both Minnesota as well as North Dakota producers. And it's a matter of getting the word out that you're interested in those varieties. If you are interested in small quantities of something, sometimes we here at NDSU are able to help out with a couple of pounds to give you a start. And then we can give you names, if you want to buy 100 pounds. It kind of depends upon the volume.
Is that directory available online?
The directory is available online. You need to go to the North Dakota State Seed Department website and look for the potato tabs, and the directory is available there.
How about, what does the term specific gravity mean to a home gardener?
Okay, I should have defined specific gravity better when I was talking about it. We use how do I describe it? It would be an indirect measure of the dry matter content. And when we measure specific gravity, we will weigh the potatoes in air, and then we will weigh them in water. There's a little mathematical formula, and we'll come up with a number that is usually 1.0656, for example. And that would be something for the fresh market. So it'd have a very waxy texture and it's a little bit lower of a number. Then we might have a potato that would be a 1.090. That might be a chip processing potato, or it might be one of the more elongate types that we would use for French fry processing, but would make lovely, fluffy baked potatoes as well. So it's a indirect measure of dry matter content or starch content.
Okay. Lastly, do you have any wisdom about growing sweet potatoes in North Dakota?
Oh, excellent question. And I have been one of those ones that has wanted to play with this a little bit. I don't have any experience growing them here, but I know some potato producers from North Dakota, but that raise regular potatoes in other parts of the country. I also know that some of our neighbors to the north in southern Manitoba are able to grow sweet potatoes. Apparently they are just in one of those banana belts. And lastly, and I maybe you would be able to visit with the folks up at the Williston station, the Ernie French station. Kyla Spakal possibly would be able to help. I know that they, the last couple of years, have been doing some trialing with the different sweet potato varieties. So they might be our best bet on how to figure out how to grow them in North Dakota.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll just throw in my comment here about sweet potatoes. This is never going to be a sweet potato center of the world. We just don't have the heat for that.
No.
And so they're a fun crop to grow, but have some low expectations.
I think I would have to echo that.
You'll be happier that way. Okay. Thank you, Susie, for your presentation. And thank you so much for donating those potatoes. We're all going to be eating Dakota potatoes this fall and enjoying them. So thank you again. And that's it for tonight's Spring Fever Garden Forum. Well, thank you everybody for your participation, and we'll see you all next week. Same time, same bat time, same bat channel. Good night.